Picture Earth 300,000 years ago. No cities, no roads, no lights piercing the darkness. Just wind, water, and the footfalls of giants. We call ourselves Homo sapiens, the wise ape. But wisdom doesn't mean much when you're staring up at a buffalo that weighs more than a modern car, when the forest shadows hide apes 3 meters tall, when the night belongs to saber-toothed cats that hunt in coordinated packs. This wasn't our planet. Not yet. The numbers don't lie, and they're staggering. Syncerus antiquus, the giant African buffalo, tipped the scales at 1.2 to 1.8 tons. That's not a typo. These weren't the Cape buffalo you might see on safari today. These were mobile mountains of muscle and horn that dominated the savanna until just 12,000 years ago. Some populations hung on even longer, persisting until 4,000 years ago, long enough that early agricultural humans might have glimpsed them. Rock art from North Africa confirms it. In the Tassili Niger Mountains, ancient artists painted these giants with remarkable accuracy. The distinctive horn shape, the massive bulk, the way they held their heads. These weren't mythological creatures, these were neighbors. Dangerous, magnificent neighbors that could gore a human without breaking stride. But Africa wasn't unique in harboring titans. In the forests of Asia lurked Gigantopithecus blacki, an ape that stood 3 meters tall and weighed up to 300 kilograms. Forget King Kong, this was the real thing. For nearly 2 million years, Gigantopithecus thrived across southern China and Southeast Asia. Their teeth tell the story. Massive molars designed for grinding tough plant material, jaws that could crack bamboo like we snap pencils. Then, around 300,000 years ago, right as our species was taking its first breaths in Africa, these giant apes vanished. Climate change shrank their forests. Bamboo became scarce. The giants fell one by one until only teeth and massive jaws remained for us to find. They never even met us. By the time Homo sapiens reached Asia, Gigantopithecus was already a ghost. On remote Pacific islands, evolution took a different path. Meiolania, the giant horned turtle, looked like something from a fever dream. Imagine a turtle the size of a small car, with a skull adorned with devil-like horns and a tail that ended in a spiked club. This wasn't some Mesozoic leftover. Meiolania damalipi survived on Vanuatu until just 3,000 years ago. That's yesterday in geological terms. That's recent enough that when the Lapita people, the ancestors of Polynesians, first arrived on these islands, they found dragons. The archaeological evidence is heartbreaking in its clarity. Pre-human layers, Meiolania bones everywhere. Post-human layers, Meiolania bones in cooking fires. Then, nothing. Just empty sand where giants once nested. Europe had its own cast of monsters. Megaloceros giganteos, the Irish elk, carried antlers that spanned 3.5 meters from tip to tip. Try to picture that. Stand with your arms outstretched. Now double that distance. That's what this deer carried on its head. Every year, males would shed these massive antlers and regrow them, a metabolic feat that boggles the mind. The calcium alone required for such growth meant these animals needed specific mineral-rich environments. They survived the Ice Age, made it through the warming period, and kept going until 7,700 years ago. These weren't victims of some ancient catastrophe. They persisted deep into the Holocene, into what we consider the modern era. In Ireland's peat bogs, their antlers emerged like ancient crowns, so well preserved you can see the texture of the bone, the points where blood vessels once pulsed. And then there was Palaeoloxodon antiquus, the straight-tusked elephant. At 13 tons, it dwarfed today's African elephants. Its tusks were straight rather than curved, like massive ivory spears jutting from its face. Evidence from Neumark Nord in Germany shows something remarkable. 125,000 years ago, someone killed one. Let me tell you about fear. Real, evolutionary, encoded in your DNA fear. Because before we were hunters, we were hunted. And nothing hunted quite like Homotherium. For decades, we thought saber-toothed cats were solitary ambush predators, tigers with dental problems. We were wrong. Dead wrong. Recent genomic analysis has rewritten everything we thought we knew about Homotherium latidens. This wasn't a night stalker waiting in shadows. This was something far worse. The DNA reveals adaptations for endurance running, for daylight vision, for pack coordination. Homotherium hunted like we would eventually learn to hunt, in groups, in daylight. running prey to exhaustion across open ground. You're an early human, maybe 200,000 years ago. You're gathering tubers with your band when someone shouts a warning. On the horizon, shapes moving in that distinctive loping gait. Not one predator, but 5, 6, maybe more. They're not charging. They don't need to. They'll follow you at a steady pace, taking turns leading, wearing you down. You can't outrun them. You can't hide. They hunt by day. You can't even rely on darkness because they'll be there when the sun rises. Their teeth were built for slicing, not crushing. Those famous sabers weren't for show. They were precision instruments designed to sever arteries, to bleed out prey efficiently. One well-placed bite to the neck and they could just wait. Follow the blood trail. Let exhaustion and blood loss do the work. This is what shaped us. This pressure, this terror, this need to be smarter because we couldn't be stronger. But Homotherium wasn't our only nightmare. The whole predator guild was a horror show of biological engineering. Cave lions, larger than any lion alive today, ruled from Spain to Siberia. Unlike modern lions, isotope analysis of their bones suggests they specialized in hunting reindeer and cave bears. Yes, they hunted bears. Short-faced bears could stand over 3 meters tall on their hind legs. Arctodus in the Americas, Agriotherium in the Old World. These weren't the omnivorous teddy bears we know today. These were active predators with long legs built for running. Imagine being chased by something that combined a bear's strength with a wolf's stamina. And in warmer regions, the water itself was death. The African giant crocodile didn't care that you were developing language. It had been perfecting its ambush tactics for millions of years before your lineage even existed. Every trip to the river was a calculated risk. Every crossing was a dance with death. Here's what's remarkable though. We survived. Somehow, these weak, slow, defenseless apes figured out how to exist in a world designed to eat them. How? Tools helped. Fire helped more. But the real weapon was each other. And perhaps most importantly, we learned to see the world differently than any creature before us. Neumark Nord, Germany. 125,000 years ago, a lakeshore in what would have been a warm interglacial period, and scattered across ancient sediments, the butchered remains of straight-tusked elephants, multiple individuals, cut marks on bones, and most damning of all, a wooden spear. Think about what this means. Early humans, probably Neanderthals or their immediate ancestors, killed and butchered creatures weighing 13 tons. That's like taking down a small building with pointed sticks. The spear itself is a masterpiece, shaped from yew wood, balanced for throwing with a fire-hardened tip. This wasn't a lucky stick. This was engineering. Someone understood wood grain, weight distribution, aerodynamics. Someone practiced. Someone taught others. The logistics alone are staggering. You can't kill an elephant by yourself. You can't even process one alone. Experiments show it takes a coordinated team days to fully butcher an elephant carcass, even with metal tools. These ancient hunters had stone, but they did it. The cut marks tell the story. Systematic, organized, efficient. They knew elephant anatomy. They knew where to strike, how to dismember, what parts to take first. This wasn't opportunistic scavenging of an already dead animal. This was hunting. The site preserves more than just bones. There are flint tools scattered in precise locations, the ancient equivalent of a surgical kit. Different tools for different jobs. Sharp flakes for cutting hide, heavy stones for breaking bones to access marrow, scrapers for cleaning every scrap of meat from bone. And it reveals something profound about what we were becoming. Other predators evolved better weapons, sharper teeth, stronger jaws, faster legs. We evolved cooperation. We evolved the ability to hold a plan in our minds, to communicate complex ideas, to trust that others would play their roles. A single human versus an elephant is a joke. 20 humans with a plan? That's an apex predator in the making. But here's the thing that should haunt you. We weren't special yet. This was 125,000 years ago. Modern humans wouldn't leave Africa for another 70,000 years. The age of cave art was still 90,000 years in the future. We were killing giants before we were making jewelry, before we were painting, before we were even fully us. Then something changed. Humans started doing something unprecedented. We went deep into caves, places with no food, no water, no strategic value, and we painted. Not just casual marks, Elaborate, sophisticated, gorgeous art that still takes your breath away. In Chauvet Cave in France, dated to 32,000 years ago, artists captured the essence of cave lions in charcoal and ochre. The way the legs bunch before a charge, the weight of the shoulders, the focus in the eyes. These were observations from life, from humans who had watched these predators, studied them, survived them. The technical skill is staggering. They used the natural contours of the cave walls to give their drawings dimension. A bulge becomes a bison's shoulder. A crack becomes the line of a horse's back. They understood perspective, shading, movement. In some places, they scraped the cave wall clean before painting, creating a smooth canvas. In others, they incorporated the rough texture into their art. Lascaux Cave, painted 17,000 years ago, contains over 600 animals. Horses galloping across stone. Aurochs, the wild ancestors of cattle, rendered in loving detail. Their massive bodies, their forward-sweeping horns, the way they held their heads. And everywhere, always, the dangerous ones, the big ones, the ones that mattered. The Hall of Bulls at Lascaux contains some of the largest cave art ever discovered. One bull is 5.2 meters long. 5 meters. Someone lay on their back or built scaffolding to paint a bull larger than the actual animal. What drove them to such extremes? They didn't paint people. Almost never. A few hand stencils, blown pigment creating negative space. The occasional strange figure that might be human or might be something else. Therianthropes, human-animal hybrids that hint at shamanic traditions or mythological thinking. But overwhelmingly, obsessively, they painted the giants. The animals they chose reveal their priorities. At Rouffignac Cave, over 250 mammoths dominate the art. At Fond de Gaume, bison rule. Each cave seems to have its specialty, its obsession, and timing matters. Many caves were painted when these animals were already becoming rare, as if the artists knew. Why? Why leave the warmth of the fire, crawl through narrow passages into the absolute darkness of the earth, and spend hours, maybe days, painting creatures that could kill you? Maybe because they were already disappearing. The extinctions didn't announce themselves. There was no asteroid, no supervolcano, no dramatic moment when the world changed. Just a slow emptying, a gradual silence. The pattern is terrifyingly consistent. Humans arrive, megafauna collapse. In Australia, the fossil record shows large animal populations crashing within 4,000 years of human arrival around 47,000 years ago. No major climate event. No volcanic winter. Just people showing up and giants vanishing. The Australian extinctions were particularly thorough. Diprotodon, a wombat the size of a hippopotamus. Genyornis, a 2-meter tall flightless bird. Meiolania, a monitor lizard that grew to 7 meters long. Thylacoleo, the marsupial lion with bolt-cutter jaws, all gone within a few millennia of human arrival. But, and this is crucial, it wasn't simple. It wasn't just humans bad killed everything. The story is more complex, and in some ways more damning. Take Europe. Neanderthals had lived alongside mammoths, woolly rhinos, and giant deer for hundreds of thousands of years. The populations were stable, sustainable. Then, modern humans arrived around 45,000 years ago with new technologies, new hunting strategies, new ways of thinking. Within 35,000 years, an eye blink geologically, most of the European megafauna was gone. What did we do differently? We invented new weapons, the spear thrower, which multiplied the force a human could generate. We developed new hunting strategies, driving entire herds off cliffs, setting grass fires to panic prey. We were more mobile, following herds across vast distances. We were more flexible, switching prey when one species became scarce. The killing blow often came from combination punches. Climate warming at the end of the Ice Age shrunk habitats. Forests replaced grasslands. Migration routes closed. And into this stressed system came humans with projectile weapons, cooperative hunting, and the ability to adapt faster than evolution could keep up. We were the variable that broke the equation. Some argue climate was the main culprit. And yes, dramatic warming 14,000 to 12,000 years ago restructured entire ecosystems. But here's the problem with that argument. Megafauna had survived dozens of similar climate shifts over millions of years. What made this one different? We did. The smoking gun comes from places like New Zealand, where there was no ice age effect at all. Moa, giant flightless birds, thrived there for millions of years through every conceivable climate. Then Polynesians arrived around 1280 AD. Within 200 years, every single Moa species was extinct. No climate change, no habitat loss, just humans being humans. But not everything died at once. Some giants persisted, clinging to existence in pockets of the world we hadn't yet reached or hadn't yet overwhelmed. Their stories are somehow sadder than the rest. Megaloceros giganteus, the Irish elk, made it to 7,700 years ago. Think about that timeline. The Ice Age ended around 11,700 years ago. These massive deer survived the warming, adapted to new forests, found ways to maneuver those impossible antlers through changing landscapes. They weathered everything nature threw at them. In western Siberia, small populations held on as humans were already farming in the Middle East, already building temples, already developing writing. Somewhere in the Ural Mountains, the last giant deer browsed on willows, unaware they were living fossils. Wrangel Island tells an even stranger story. This Arctic island became the final refuge of woolly mammoths. As their continental cousins vanished 10,000 years ago, the Wrangel population survived. They were still there 4,000 years ago. The Great Pyramid of Giza was already 500 years old when the last mammoth died. These island mammoths had become dwarfed, insular dwarfism reducing them to the size of modern cattle. Their tusks were malformed, their coats had lost pigmentation. Genetic analysis shows severe inbreeding, harmful mutations accumulating. They were dying slowly, genetically. Then humans arrived on Wrangel, and within centuries, even these last mammoths were gone. Meiolania's story is even more poignant. On the island of Vanuatu, these dragon turtles survived until 3,000 years ago. They'd been there for millions of years. Volcanic eruptions survived. Sea level changes adapted. Tropical storms endured. Then the Lapita people arrived. Expert seafarers, master navigators, they island hopped across the Pacific, bringing pottery, pigs, and extinction. The pattern held even on the most remote islands, especially on the most remote islands, where unique species had no experience with mammalian predators. The very last wild aurochs died in Poland in 1627. We have the exact date. We know the forest, Jaktorov. We know it was a female. We know the last male had died 7 years earlier. This was the age of Shakespeare. Galileo was looking through telescopes while the last wild ancestor of cattle breathed its last in a Polish forest. What's extraordinary is that we tried to save them. Polish kings declared the death penalty for hunting aurochs. They assigned gamekeepers. They recognized these animals were special, irreplaceable, but it was too late. Habitat loss, disease from domestic cattle, and centuries of hunting pressure had done their work. Conservation came too late for the aurochs. We named them. We painted them on cave walls for 30,000 years, and then we let them slip away. Here's what sets us apart, what makes us unique among all Earth's species. We remember, we're the only ones who do. A lion doesn't mourn the extinct cave lions that once ruled Europe. Elephants, for all their remarkable memory, don't tell stories of their straight-tusked cousins. But we do. We carry these ghosts with us. In the cave art at Rouffignac in France, someone 14,000 years ago spent hours etching woolly mammoths into the ceiling. By then, mammoths were already rare, already retreating to their final refuges. Did the artist know they were recording something precious? Did they sense the ending? At Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, 11,000 years ago, humans carved pillars with images of animals: aurochs, lions, vultures. This is the world's oldest known temple complex, built by hunter-gatherers just as their way of life was ending, just as agriculture was beginning, just as the last giants were fading from the land. It's as if they knew something fundamental was changing and tried to capture it in stone. We're still doing it. Every museum skeleton, every cave art tour, every documentary about extinct megafauna is part of the same impulse that drove someone into Chauvet Cave 32,000 years ago. The need to remember, to witness, to say this existed. And here's the beautiful, terrible irony. We became fully human in dialogue with these giants. They shaped our evolution. The fear of Homotherium taught us to cooperate. The challenge of mammoth hunting taught us to plan. The vastness of their presence taught us we were small, vulnerable, and clever. Modern humans carry this history in our bones. Our fight or flight responses evolved in their presence. Our ability to throw objects with accuracy, unmatched in the animal kingdom, developed under their pressure. Even our sleep patterns, our tendency to have someone stay awake while others rest, speaks to millions of years of being prey. But we also carry it in our minds. Every culture on Earth has stories of giants, monsters, dragons, myths that might echo real encounters, passed down through hundreds of generations. When Aboriginal Australians tell stories of the Mihirung Paringmal, the giant thunderbird, are they remembering Genyornis, a 2-meter tall flightless bird that went extinct 45,000 years ago? When cultures worldwide share flood myths, are they recalling the dramatic sea level rises at the end of the Ice Age? We can't know for certain, but we are the only species that could even ask the question.